How's everybody doing? How we doing? It's been a minute. Hopefully some of you enjoying the TCU Michigan game. Oh, Michigan just scored again. Looking like a blowout for a second, so I thought it'd be a good idea. But turns out it's going to be a close game, so it is what it is. But it's been a minute. Ooh, I'm still at a new iPad. I'm just going to turn the volume down because I see the chat on my iPad. So, and with the new iPad, the volume buttons are switched. So what was up is now down. What was down is up. Getting used to some new tech. All right. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into it. So I mean, what have I missed? I mean, I haven't really missed a lot. I think nothing crazy's happened in the past 4 or 5 days since I last streamed, but it's been pretty quiet. A little bit milder of a pattern, a little bit more active Pacific. The Pacific is starting to get going. Or not started, is going, and a little bit of a southeast ridge too, a little bit. So you combine those two together, and you get milder pattern. As you can see, your height lines. Our 558 line is at New York City. There's a good chance it's going to be some pretty mild weather. Our 570 line is past New York City. It's definitely going to be some milder weather. So it's going to be pretty mild in the beginning of the week. Next week, probably some rain for some folks. I know some folks are getting some rain today. I did today. Nothing too crazy weather-wise, but we are. I think we are going to start to get into a little bit more active pattern potentially, and then maybe even a PV stretch event, maybe a polar vortex stretching event takes place in the middle of January where we could really get another Arctic outbreak. But those are rather difficult to pinpoint, especially so far out, because weather in general is hard to figure out a few days out, let alone a couple weeks. So not really going to go into any specifics on that, but I do think there's an opportunity here next week. So as we get this system to pull through, we can see there's some cold air to work with here a little bit. It's just too far to the north. You can see we have some pretty good cold air filtering in here. So north of the border, some pretty good Arctic air to work with. There's just not for us. So I will be watching this to see, because there's been different models. You need to take a look here. There is something to take a look at, but not super excited on that one. I know some people have been talking about that one a little bit early. I'd say middle next week. The middle part of next week. I'm not too excited on that one. Just don't think there's a ton to work with right there in terms of the setup. I think it's a difficult setup with the southeast ridge being as prominent as it is, and just it's not a great 500 millibar setup as well. It's convection firing off the main 500 lobe, which is back to the west and to its north. So I'm not a huge fan of that setup, but the setup I am interested in is this one. That comes around late next week. That Friday, Saturday time frame, I think that January 6th, 7th time frame. I've been talking about this for almost not a week, I would say, but I mean, at least like 5 days now. I've been talking about this time frame, and this overall is a pretty good look. I mean, it's basically, a neutral tilted trough just north of Georgia is a pretty good look. It's a pretty good look to have. 6 days out, 5, 6 days out, whatever. It's a pretty decent look to have. That's not an awful look. And I think it's something to work with, and just in general. And I'm not looking at the P-type map. I'm not looking run to run at the P-type map, even though I see it on Twitter. Regardless, um, we can clearly see here that this is a good-looking trough. This is a good-looking trough, something to work with, um, something that can pull in some deep moisture and also pull in some deep Arctic air. So when we have a chance to combine those two things, that makes me think that there's a potential ceiling for this system. It is a little bit, it's intriguing and a little bit unique. Not intriguing just because, not just because of the setup, but intriguing because it's a little bit unique of a 500 millibar. Because the previous system is actually going to shed. It's going to pretty strung out here at 500 millibars, and it's going to shed a piece back, and that's going to work to be a part of the upper level low for the next system. A new upper level low forms, and the incoming trough, the next piece of our stream interaction here wraps around the upper level low, and that's how we get convection to come off the eastern seaboard. And ideally, we turn this trough negative. We wrap this, we consolidate and amplify everything a little bit sooner so we can throw back that precipitation back into New England and the Northeast. So that's the idea behind this setup in trying to get, a big time snowstorm. That is the plan here with this system. And take a look at ensembles as well. Probably not going to get a ton, but there's not super great consistency here between the models, but that's not expected so far out. It's a pretty good look. It's a neutral. Ideally, we would dig this a little bit more. Nope. This music is just not. This music is just not cutting it for me. We're going no music because I'm not liking it. It just sounds like dirty music. I'm not having it. Not having it. Point being, besides that, we can work with that. I mean, I drew that a little bit. I dig that a little bit further. But you can tell there's some models, not true. Some models that are just sliding this off a little bit more progressive. It gets more associated with the previous wave, and it gets caught in the flow of that. Not able to separate itself. But then you can see some in the spread as well are saying, well, let's get in this trough to dig down here, and we can really amplify this thing. We take a look at some of the specific ensemble members itself. Some of these. Here we go. All right, we have some decent, right? A little bit too much of a spread. There's a bit of a spread here. This is kind of the camp we're looking at. There's so much spread right now, but that's the camp right there that you're looking at in terms of surface low, where you want to work with. But some of these are just, some of these aren't bad. You can see different timing, but there's so many different timings with some of these lows, and there's just a little bit too much uncertainty this far out to be super confident in a specific setup, I would say. But the one thing that's consistent is we go to 500. And the reason this intrigues me, right? We have this neutral trough, right? Just into the Tennessee Valley. But we also have this big time Canadian block, right? But we also have the thing that makes me think that we can amplify more is, right, the Pacific has also been very active. There's a chance that models are going to underestimate that in the medium to long range. But also, Eastern Ridge right here is going to prevent a storm from just completely sliding out over the eastern seaboard. So this is the room for it to go. This is the path, which kind of intrigues me. At the same time, I know we look at this and say, oh, I'm worried about this not even being something, and it's just going off the East Coast. At the same time, I worry about this over amplifying for the reasons I just stated. If the Pacific is going to if models are going to underdo, you can play this all the way back, I guess. If models are going to underdo the amplification in the Pacific potentially in the medium range, our wave coming off the Pacific, right? We've had a pretty strong Pacific jet that's been coming in, and my worry is models are potentially underdoing it, and also combined with our North Atlantic ridge. I'm not sure how much room we're going to have to either over amplify, or depending on the placement of the ridge, and depending on how the Pacific sets up. I say that kind of broadly, but for that reason, given we're so far out, I think there's a lot of room for a large variety in terms of the track. And I say thread the needle a little bit too, because of the uncertainty I have with all these pieces. I'm not sure exactly. It's almost like a two-part Canadian block kind of. It's almost like a dual ridge, basically. It's kind of what we're working with. So there's some moving pieces in terms of there's not just one big Canadian block. There's a couple of moving pieces there with the high pressure. There's some uncertainty with what's coming out of the Pacific, and there's also some uncertainty with this ridge, which is connected to what I was talking about with the two-part block. So that has nothing to do with me talking about convective feedback, how it's handling the upper level low itself, or that goes without me talking about playback. That doesn't even have me talk about how much of this upper level low does it shed, how much gets pulled forward, what exactly happens. We need to get this system out of the way first. How much does it take with it? How much does it hold back? Because it's clearly this is stretched out vorticity, and models trying to figure out how much stress, how much each system gets of this stretched vorticity of this upper level low here is rather tricky to figure out so far out. So there's still too many variables to be able to pinpoint exactly what's going to happen. Even if someone tells you they know exactly what's going to happen, you can very well retort with the reasons I just said, that there's no reason to believe that you should have any confidence in something guaranteed happening. But I bring us back to here. I mean, and the Euro too has got something along with this. So, in this, the difference is here, right? Euro it's a little bit different because it's handling the upper level low, the placement, how much gets pulled back, how much gets brought with the first system. You can see the difference there between the Euro and the GFS. Euro holds a little bit more back. Or sorry, opposite. GFS holds a little bit more back. Euro brings a little bit more to the first system, and the next system has less to work with. You can see stream interaction fails between these two pieces, which would be nice. And we're just left with an upper level low that does not have a ton of moisture to work with. And that's why you saw someone talking about, Norland trough. And I think, there is a chance with the first system, I guess, technically, to get some snow. But I wouldn't try to. I think this storm behind it is the better chance than this one in front of it. So it's going to get kind of mucked up, the pattern, mid to late next week. With just a lot of stretched out vorticity across the U.S. Remember looking at 500. 500 is, for me, it's always my go-to. For many of you understand why it is, and it's not just my go-to, it's the go-to when it comes to winter forecasting. I think it's easy to be able to look at 500 and figure out a lot about what's going to happen just based on the 500 look. And we we can take a look at the Euro ensembles as well. Difference between the Jeffs and the Euro. We can see the Euro a little bit more progressive with this system because it was holding less back. So we're not reserving as much vorticity left for this system, and more gets pulled into the previous one. And the operational the ensembles tend to follow the operational many times when it comes to every suite of new model runs that come out every 6 hours. They tend to follow closely behind. Because the changes that made them change the operational are also leaning the ensembles to change a certain way as well, which makes sense. But yeah, that's all I got for now. We'll talk more about this over the next couple weeks or so, or not next couple days or so. Sorry, and we'll see how it turns out. All right, appreciate everybody for coming in. Peace.